This is a class of 11-year-old boys who have just begun life in the grammar school at which I am the careers master. What sort of impression do they make upon you? Do they seem bright or so bright? Workers or slackers? At first glance, there doesn't seem to be much to choose between them as they begin their grammar school career. I have seen many generations of boys just like these, and so have most schoolmasters the length and breadth of this country. How do these boys turn out? What is it that makes the successes succeed and the failures fail? This is a question which I would not presume to answer. The complexity of human nature is too great for a simple explanation which will account for these differences. But as the years pass, we at school become increasingly aware of certain influences which affect all boys for good or ill. This film is going to follow the development of 3 boys through the school. 3 boys in this very class. 3 boys who may seem similar as they start their academic life, but who are going to prove to be surprisingly different as the years roll by. Of necessity, the account of their careers is greatly condensed and their characters oversimplified. But I hope that those of you who are witnessing their progress through the school will be prompted to think of your own sons, who may have a great deal in common with the boys seen here on the screen. I'm not going to suggest that any of you are as bad as some of the parents you will see in this film, but I do want you to ask yourselves whether the home that you are providing for your children is in every possible way the best place for them to work quietly, with peace of mind, and with a great deal of encouragement, as well as partaking in the family community. The atmosphere of the home is undoubtedly one of the major forces at work upon all children. You see your boy only at home. I see him only at school. Isn't there a danger that he may become 2 different people in these 2 different environments? What do I know about your boy at home unless you come and tell me? And how can you really gauge what he is doing at school unless you come and hear what his masters say about him? Somewhere in that gulf between school and home, a lot of potential goodness and talent is wasted. This film is dedicated to the continued improvement of relations between parents and teachers in every school in this country. The Form Master. One of the tasks of a Form Master is to get to know and understand the boys in his form. With boys of this age, I find it is a fairly easy matter as they are not yet self-conscious and bring their troubles and problems readily to me. This is Alan, who seems to have settled down more quickly than most. The other day he told me that he intended to join the History Society. And here is Alan again, 17 years old and very grown up, receiving a history prize at Speech Day. Christopher is having some trouble in finding his feet. He seems intelligent, but sly as well. Excuses. Still, these boys need to be given a chance to settle into the new environment. We must wait and see how Christopher is getting on after a term or so. In fact, Christopher makes nothing but trouble throughout the school, and here he is at the age of 15, already a very wily thief. Form Master. I'm rather worried about this boy Brian. He's a little younger than the others and seems to be in a world on his own. I have tried to chat with him to see if anything is wrong, but he shuts up like an oyster. He seems to have a grievance, but I cannot find what it is. Of these 3 boys, Alan, Brian, and Christopher, we are going to concentrate our attention chiefly upon Brian. We are not going to look into his future as we did with Alan and Christopher, but we'll let his school career unfold, step by step. But first, let us hear from some of the subject masters what they think of the 3 boys. French Master. Alan is not outstandingly intelligent, but he is extremely attentive in class, and as a result his French speech has already shown considerable progress in a few weeks. His written work is neat, and it is clear to see that he takes a lot of pride in getting it right. Form Master. I don't think that Alan is a swot. He enjoys kicking a ball around with the other boys, and because of this he is not regarded as an outsider by the academically less able boys. He is one of those people who can succeed at everything. Not by luck, but by sheer hard work, whether the task is a homework exercise or scoring a goal against the other side. History Master. The other evening I held a meeting of the History Society after school, and Alan gave us a short talk about a Norman church which he visited recently. He seems to be guided by a worthy enthusiasm both in and out of school. Of course, it's very early to make a forecast, but I shouldn't be surprised if he turns out to be good university material. Physical Education Master. Alan was a little cautious when he first came into the gymnasium and was faced with so much new apparatus. But he has gained confidence, and in particular seems to enjoy working on the trampoline. Although young, I am seriously considering admitting him to the trampoline club. Form Master. A few weeks of the second term have elapsed, and one can already see marked differences in work and behavior between boys in my class. It already looks as if Alan has made a good start to his career. This is not so with Christopher, who has rapidly become chief troublemaker in this class. I was forced to put a comment about this on his report at the end of last term, but he has not changed his ways, and I have not heard from his parents. So far, he has been clever enough not to be caught for his bigger offences, such as bullying, but my colleagues who teach him and I myself know quite well what he is up to, and although we do not like punishing first formers severely, this boy will need some really stern treatment before he is deterred from his bad behavior. Maths Master. What annoys me about Christopher is that he is so unwilling to learn. The other day, in one of my mathematics periods, I discovered that he was not sure whether to multiply or divide by 16 to turn ounces into pounds. He is a capable boy, and mistakes of this sort arise from sheer laziness. When I questioned him again at the end of the lesson, he was still unable to do this simple sum. Yet he passed his selection test to enter this school. Why does he think that he can slack? Form Master. Of course, Christopher is some months above the average age of the class. He's realized this, and it gives him a feeling of superiority over the younger boys, and presumably a feeling that the work that they do is beneath him. The other day I was sorry to see him march before me for his first serious offence. I only wish I knew more about Christopher's home life. A talk with his parents would certainly show a new aspect of him and throw some light on his behaviour. French Master. I take this class for 4 French lessons a week. That may not sound a great deal of time, but after only a term I have noticed that Brian is not responding as well as I should like. I wondered why this was, at least until I noticed that he sits near Christopher. We are all agreed, I think, that Christopher is not only a bad influence, but the most powerful influence in the class. Maths Master. I have noticed particularly this term that Brian is not doing his maths homework properly. He leaves books at home. He does not answer questions at all well in class, and seems to regard all my attempts to rouse him into activity as personal insults. I have told him that he needs to pay more attention in mathematics if he expects to get on in the subject. These youngsters imagine that the GCE is 1,000 years away. In reality, they have less than 4 years to learn everything they need to know for the exam. When Brian approached me to ask if he could play tennis, I naturally said that I thought he was too young. His expression at that made me change my mind. I'd heard what some of my colleagues had said about unsatisfactory work in class and decided that he might be worth more outside the classroom. I gave him a trial, and he did not disappoint me. For such a young lad, he is quite a capable player. He told me today that he kept all the newspaper cuttings about tennis stars. I asked him if he wanted to be a professional himself. His answer surprised me. He wants to be an electrical engineer and keep his tennis playing just for pleasure. At that moment, he seemed much older. I really think that the lad has more character than we imagine. Physics master. Brian opens up quite a lot at our radio club meetings. His knowledge of what goes on inside a radio set is astonishing. The other day, he showed me a kit of parts for a transistor radio. He had saved up for a very long time to buy it. I asked him if his father had helped him with the money. That was very obviously the wrong question, for he pulled a face and said that his father didn't approve of the way Brian tinkered around all night with a lot of junk, as he put it. I changed the subject and has never mentioned his home since. It is quite apparent from the eagerness with which he works at our meetings that he has really set his heart on electrical engineering. It's a great pity that he feels that people are against him, because he seems to be a good boy at heart and likely to turn out well if he is treated with consideration. I must admit that what he said about the atmosphere in his home was disturbing. If the positive values he is acquiring at school are counteracted by the negative attitude of his father, then Brian just isn't going to get anywhere. Careers master. At the beginning of this film, I said that schoolmasters have an opportunity of knowing what the boys they teach are like at home. We can often only guess what the Allans, Brians, and Christophers do when they change out of their school uniforms, when they forget the school day with its pleasures and pains, its praise and punishment, and merge into the atmosphere of the home. In a film, one can move about quite easily in time and space. Do you recognize that boy arriving home from school on his bicycle? Yes, it is Alan, who is now 14 years old. We have not only jumped a gap of 3 years, but we have brought our cameras to the homes of 2 of the 3 boys to the other side of the picture. Woman's voice. We've lived next door to Alan's family for several years and seen the children grow up. Alan is in the 4th form now and will be taking his GCE next year, and his parents insist that he does his homework immediately after tea every evening. Only then is he allowed to go out with his friends or watch the television. His younger brother has strict instructions not to be too noisy or disturb Alan while he is working. Alan's voice. I have 3 homeworks of 40 minutes each night, sometimes 4. That means that the time between tea and bedtime is pretty well filled. A lot of boys in my form complain about it all the time. I think it's a lot, but it's just got to be done. I start off with the subjects I like best and leave them till afterwards. Sometimes a piece of work takes longer than the 40 minutes, but I try to finish it because I shall be taking 8 subjects in the GCE next year, and I don't want to miss anything out. Another woman's voice. I don't know where that Christopher from next door goes in the evenings, but he never seems to be at home. If I was his father, I'd walk the streets until I found the kid, drag him home and give him the hiding of his life. The boy's got a gang, or so they say. There was a fire last in an empty warehouse. Nobody knows how it started, but the police seem to have tightened up in this district, and Christopher doubtless goes further afield. He's nearly 14 and a half, and sometimes he shouts at his mother so that you can hear it right through the wall. His parents have no control over him at all. A boy his age ought to be working instead of lounging around the streets every evening. Well, I'm glad he's not mine, because I know for a fact he's going to be no good. Third woman's voice. I heard the sound of another quarrel next door last night, but I didn't know what it was about until Mrs. Smith on the other side told me. It seems that Brian was trying to do his homework again when his father wanted the telly off. It's only natural, isn't it, that the man should have a few home comforts after a hard day in the shop? I don't know why these boys can't settle down in a corner and forget what goes on around them. And all that homework, what good does it do them? As soon as my Arch was 15, I went down and told his headmaster to let him leave so he could get a job. There's no good having sons if they're going to loaf around earning nothing till they're 18, I say. At least daughters help around the house. Brian. There was a real row at home last night. I had a lot of homework and there was wrestling on the telly which Dad wanted to see. I tried to do my homework, but it was too noisy, and besides, I couldn't see properly. So I gave up and put my books away and watched the telly for a bit. I don't like wrestling, and I soon got bored. So I went and fetched the parts of a new radio set I'm building. And tried to work on it. But the light was so poor I just couldn't see what I was doing. When I switched the light on, my dad went mad. He jumped up and said, who was master in his house, and did I think I could do as I darn well pleased without asking him? Then he picked up my set, hurled it on the floor, and smashed it to bits with his feet. I don't remember the next couple of minutes, I was so mad at him. Then I was out in the street on the way to a place where I knew Chris and his gang meet. I vowed I'd never forgive Dad for what he did to my set. Careers Master. I knew Alan's parents quite well, as they had chatted with me more than once at careers and parents' evenings. They had not had much educational opportunity themselves, but were most anxious to do the best they could for their son. Alan was a boy who worked and played hard at school and made excellent progress generally. When he came to the careers room for an interview in his 5th year, he was no stranger to me, and I knew where his ambitions lay. I asked him what success he had had in his GCE trial exams, and he told me he had passed in all 8 subjects. He decided to follow the career of chartered accountant. He would take his A-levels in the economic 6th form and go all out for a university place. I could see no fault in this plan and felt confident that Alan would succeed. But when Christopher walked into my room, I was truly depressed. For here was a boy whose school record was bad, and in whom appeared no enthusiasm, no ambition, no wish to accept the help that was being offered him by the staff. I had been trying to obtain the cooperation of his parents for more than a year, but without success. They appeared to regard him as being outside their control and responsibility. Christopher hated every moment of his school life and was out to leave at the earliest moment, taking the first job that offered itself. The best help we could give him now was to try and get him into a job where he would at least get some training, and so recover something from the wreck of his school days. I asked the youth employment officer to pay special attention to Christopher, for he was a boy whose upbringing had failed him. Brian's interview was a difficult, rewarding one. His reports had shown that he was of the type who could do better but does not exert himself. In previous talks with him, I had understood him to be a pleasant but not a very happy boy, who was making only slow progress as though he had a ball and chain attached to his ankle. All he did was done half-heartedly. At the end of the 5th year, he was to leave and join his father in their small family business, which he would eventually inherit. I made a determined effort to get at the cause of his failure. Eventually, he admitted that the thought of spending the rest of his life in his father's fish shop was detestable, but he had been unable to oppose his parents in the plan which they earnestly believed to be the right one. Brian's real ambition was far from this, and I quickly explained the steps he must take to qualify as an electrical engineer. The difficulty facing the boy was the lack of understanding of his real interests on the part of his parents, and a desire to force him into a preconceived pattern. As Youth Employment Officer, I interview many different kinds of boy. The Allens of this world present the schoolmasters and myself with few problems, because this kind of boy is resilient enough to fight his own problems and win. The Christers, as the careers master has pointed out, are a very different story because they drop all their problems right in our laps, and even seem to resent any attempt on our part to help them. A boy like Brian, whose motives are misunderstood by his parents but supported by his teachers, is another sort of problem, because he wavers on the borderline between success and failure, and a push in the wrong direction could have tragic consequences. I work in close conjunction with the careers masters and mistresses in the schools of this city, and our joint aim is to help the boys and girls to choose and equip themselves for the job that they are most suited to do. The Allens, Bryans and Christophers are not just names in a card index. They are individuals whom we must guide to a sense of purpose and to an awareness of the importance of preparing their careers responsibly. Each boy has his own combination of aptitudes, abilities and interests, and it is essential that these should be identified as a first step towards decision about a career. The important question is not what is a good job, but what is a good job for me? It is not enough to decide what a boy's abilities are. The effort which goes into applying them to the school syllabus is equally important, so that the group of subjects needed to entrance and career is assured. One of the greatest tragedies a youth employment officer finds is when a boy does not persevere with a subject that he does not like and is finding difficult up to O-level, and so drops it, only to find that entry to his chosen career is barred without it. Careers Master and I arrange exhibitions, careers evenings, industrial tours and so on. The object of these activities is to make available information to boys and their parents about a wide range of careers. The theme running through all the activities is self-assessment, and as many professions and trades are covered as possible, so that the boy is presented with information which we hope will help him in making his finals. Thinking about careers arises naturally from consideration of achievement at school. School reports show a continuous picture of progress or difficulty overall and in individual subjects, and give a useful guide to strengths and weaknesses. Many occupations in the professional, semi-professional, technical and scientific fields have GCE entry requirements. Two questions arise from this. How many and what subjects does a boy need at O-level to have the widest choice of career? And when does he have to begin to decide about a career? The number of subjects varies, but a boy who has passed in English, maths, a science, a foreign language and one other subject would find himself in a very strong position. The question of when he should decide about his career should be flexible and capable of revision if in the light of later success or failure changes are indicated. A planned, forward-looking approach is essential, and the Youth Employment Officer and Careers Master can help here, but the extent of the help depends on how much they are consulted and how early they are approached. The Careers Master. We at school are mainly concerned with the steps leading up to the career, namely the GCE exams. Our 3 boys are all due to take their O-level exams in a week's time. Alan is obviously taking his revision seriously, Christopher is as always out on the streets with his gang, and Brian seems pretty half-hearted. It is not hard to forecast the results. Alan has 8 passes out of 8. Christopher manages just 1. And Brian only 2. Brian's mother. Of course, Brian's father and I were very shocked when the boy came home and told us he had scored only 2 passes out of 8 in his exams. The father. I was not just shocked but angry. I knew that Brian had wasted time when he should have been working, but it was the job of his teachers to keep his nose to the grindstone. Why hadn't they pushed him harder? I decided to go and see that careers master and give him a piece of my mind. Careers Master. I was so surprised when Brian's parents came to see me without even making an appointment that I forgave the father's obvious hostility. After we had talked for a while, the truth about Brian's ambitions dawned upon his father. Who saw the mistake he had made by discouraging Brian from following the career of his choice. From that moment on, the parents talked about Brian's future in the most cooperative spirit, and I was able to summon the boy to the careers room, where he heard from his father's own lips that he could be an electrical engineer. The effect that this had on the boy was a revelation. The sullenness, the unhappy appearance vanished. Brian's self-assurance and schoolwork improved greatly, and the following Christmas he obtained sufficient O-levels to get an electrical apprenticeship with one of the big firms. All was changed now that he felt his parents solidly behind him. And they rewarded his success in the exams by giving him a set of tools and a splendid radio kit. I was in no doubt that Brian would eventually obtain a national qualification. In one short interview, the boy's ambition was revealed, and this enabled him and his parents to make a fresh start, which eventually brought him success. There was no success for Christopher, however. One of the saddest features of his story is that in his last term he was caught in the act of stealing money from the school office and had to be expelled. The headmaster. You have heard members of my staff and the Youth Employment Officer talking about 3 boys in the school of which I am the headmaster. You have seen the boys grow and follow widely differing paths. This film, within a necessarily limited scope, has hinted at some of the causes that help and hinder boys in their school life and later careers. At the beginning of the film, the careers master spoke about the gulf that exists between the school and the home. This gap between the 2 worlds is very real, and we in the schools are doing all we can to bridge it. But problems still remain. How can we contact the parents of a boy like Christopher who refused to come and see us? And how often do parents like Brian's come to their senses in time to save their son's future? We have followed the careers of 3 boys. It is easy enough to look back over the 6 years we have known them. It was not so easy to look forward, but it was much more important. Who could have said with certainty that little Alan would end up as a credit to himself, his parents, and his school? Or that young Brian would overcome the stumbling block of his career and enter the apprenticeship he had set his heart on? And what about young Christopher? He did not do anyone credit, least of all himself. Our last glimpse of him is on a motorbike which he has just stolen. We can guess how our children will turn out, but that is not enough. We must ensure that they will derive the utmost benefit and happiness from their childhood. We, the teachers, will do all we can to give your children the best possible education. You, the parents, have a great opportunity to help them by giving them the best possible home. If these 2 worlds are then tightly linked by parent-teacher associations, open days, and informal talks between you and us, then we have a very good chance of producing a generation of which we may be justly proud.